at 7.
Make sure the camera comes on.
You're all set. All right. I'm going to open the planning board meeting for July 30th, 2018. The minutes.
Make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Those abstain? I think you are, yeah.
I wasn't present, so I'm
Yeah,
not
I think we
voting.
have
Abstain.
you and, so 2 abstentions and 3.
But I did read them.
All right. Any filings?
There are no filings. If you, we could just note that Wally Baker, the board's associate member, is standing in the place of Miriam Sanderson tonight and acting as a full member.
All right, thank you. Okay, Form A plans.
Anybody here representing the Form A plan? So that would be, first is the Eblings. The Eblings are here. Raise your hand. This is actually backland in the town of Sutton. The plan you're looking at is located in 3 towns. Its frontage is on Fitzpatrick Road in Grafton. A portion of the backland is in Grafton, and a portion of the backland, a portion of the backland is in Millbury, and a portion is in Sutton. So you can see from the plan, it requires 3 signatures, 1 from each board. So we're really not checking things like frontage. We did ask for certification on the town line location, as that's always very, very important to us that the town location is very accurately located, especially when it comes to assessment. So you do have a letter from Byron Andrews dated July 26th certifying that the established location of the town lines by direct GPS measurement of the relevant town corner monuments using survey grade equipment, the location of the monuments and town boundary lines can be relied on as accurate, and they did start with the town bounds. There were 2 that they located and then pulled from there. So, these will be presumably buildable lots in the town of Grafton, and so they'll proceed to that board next.
Go ahead.
Through the chair, how do I get there from here? Where is Fitzpatrick?
Can you explain to Bob Largest how
I'm just
you
trying
can
to
get
figure out
to
where
this
you are.
location from Sutton?
How'd you get here?
We
Or
go
how do
from
we get there
Grafton.
from here?
So South Grafton, so if you went Boston Road onto Providence Road, right turn, and then Depot Street or into South Grafton more up that way, or?
It's on that Milburn line, if you come down from like where Loretti's is.
Okay.
From Millbury changes
First
to
road.
Sutton to Grafton.
Bob,
Into,
do you know where Blanchard's farm used to be?
oh yeah, it's right next to it.
It's right there.
Okay, no, I just, well, that gets me in the right part of town anyways, I'm not familiar. And only, it's because of what happened at Forest Edge, I'm just nervous when we start doing things in other towns.
Right.
Cause we're fighting.
In this
Be
case, we're
real
just
clear.
signing because there's a small portion of the land right here that lies in the town of Sutton.
And there's not a cell tower or something happening
No,
there that
no.
we're gonna, last time we did this,
Yes.
it was, we're
This is
dealing with
just
it again tonight.
Single-family house lots,
Okay.
as far as I know, in the town of Grafton.
Want the minutes to reflect
Right.
that.
Okay.
There's no cell tower, solar plane going up.
Only
Anything like
what's
that.
otherwise allowed in Grafton.
Okay,
Any other questions?
I just wanna verify, there's one line being drawn down the middle of this larger property in the,
Mhm.
east-west orientation, that's the line
Yes.
that makes those 2 little lots
Yep.
in Sutton.
Makes
That's
a
right.
14.63 acre lot total, of which 3.8 is in Millbury and 1.8 is in Sutton, and the remainder is in Grafton, and then it makes a second 15.17 acre lot, of which 17 acres is in Grafton and 1.88 is in Sutton. So the town line creates, it's almost another line.
That's a boundary.
Yep.
This is gonna
line
be a
being
boundary,
drawn.
yeah. So there'd be backland from this lot.
Yeah.
plan for this lot here.
So I guess we don't care what the frontage is
Show
on
that to me, Jen.
All the front of it.
Fitzpatrick Road.
This is
Yep.
lot one.
Looks pretty short.
It's there, it's in Grafton.
This is
all-
one lot right there.
It's all in Grafton.
Yeah,
And this is the other.
And this is the
so
second
this is
lot.
3 towns.
All right, got it.
Seems a little
And
short.
the town
but
line
That's not our determination,
Okay.
right?
just
Fairly
creates
similar.
a Millbury and a Sutton
Yep.
part of it. And
Oh,
then this
yeah,
one's just
yeah.
a Sutton.
60%.
All right, so do I have a motion to endorse the plan?
I'll make a motion, we endorse this plan.
We have a date. What's the date of the plan?
The plan date appears to be April
April.
19.
2018. I'll second that.
Second. Any other discussion or questions? All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Mr. Chairman, they need to run to the other planning board meeting, so I just need your one signature.
Where's this one?
So if you could just sign it, I did put the pens right there.
I know what King Road is. Yep. Mine too.
These keys too.
7, is it the 30th day?
Oh, we're running to Northbridge, so I already took care of Grafton. There you go.
That's,
Okay,
okay.
yeah.
And then it comes out on either, well, I think in Grafton they call it
You're all set.
Millbury Avenue.
Right. And,
All right,
CVS.
24 King Road.
Right.
Got it.
You have the king's present over there.
All right,
And this is just cutting out one buildable lot. You have a parcel that totals, let me pull that up. It appears to total 2.3 plus 2.07, so 4.45 acres. It is to the north of King Road, and it is being split into a parcel and one buildable lot. So, the items on my checklist were addressed.
any questions from the board?
How far in King Road is this gonna be?
Can't tell by the plan. Is 7 King Road right on the corner?
7 King Glen is at the corner.
Yeah.
And then there's a field between that field that they're gonna build on. It's about halfway.
Okay.
You
So
know
the
where
wetland,
the old water hole used to be?
the wetlands runs between Glens and this lot?
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
I'll make a motion to accept the plan.
Second.
Looking for it. The date is July 3rd, 2018. 24 King Road.
All right, any other questions or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
All right, Journey's Rest.
Can you come grab that tomorrow?
Yeah, I can come up and get it.
All right, then I'll have them sign it at the end of the meeting, and if you could just come get it tomorrow, you're all set to go. Okay?
See you.
All right,
Right.
so this is Journey's Rest Covenant Extension.
We have Clara Kim and Justin here. So if you could just update the board, come on up. Update the board on where everything stands.
So, we did the base coat last fall, so there's a base coat on the road, and what we need to finish are the swale, hydro seeding the swale and top coat. My builders wanted us to delay the swale for access purposes for the construction, and then I spoke with Jeffrey Walsh, who, recommended that we ask for an extension, because he reminded me that the hydro seeding would also need to be fully grown in order to be signed off fully. So we're asking for the year extension as we finish the construction.
Okay,
And I already have a deposit down for the top coat.
As she
Alright.
noted, I did confirm with Jeff Walsh that he recommended a year extension. It should be done well before then, but that'll allow us to make sure that everything grows.
okay,
So it'll be done in the fall.
Yes,
That's the
if
plan.
In order to get be able to live in the house, do I need to have the grass grown?
Not usually,
Okay.
no.
Yes, the fall would be great, yes. Especially because we don't want to get stuck not being able to do the asphalt in the winter, so we want to do that. The builder for the site is going to do the swale.
Okay. Do I have a motion to extend for 1 year?
I'll make that motion.
All right,
Second.
second. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Okay, Jonathan, you have the paperwork in your file folder. He'll endorse that, and then you can come get that tomorrow after it's notarized. All right, under correspondence other, you have notice of the housing needs study. Sutton will be doing a full-blown housing needs study. Basically, the study will assess what types of housing exist within Sutton. It will review all Sutton's age and income demographics, in addition to other integral information. And it will determine what types of housing are needed within the community. Basically, the mismatch between what people can actually afford via their income statistics and what they're living in, or what's available for them to live in. The process will also result in some related bylaws and potential policies. So the survey is a SurveyMonkey survey or a hard copy survey. The survey goes live online on Wednesday, and hard copies are also available starting Wednesday in the town clerk's office, at the senior center, and in the library. So, and the first public forum on the subject will be Thursday, September 20th. There'll be 2 locations, senior center from 1 to 3, and the town hall from 7 to 9 on the same day. So we encourage everybody to participate, to at least take the survey. It's completely anonymous. There's no way to link you to it. Even if you, the last question says, yeah, do you want to be on a committee or deeply involved, you can put your name and address there. And even if you put your name and address there, we don't tie your name to the questions on the rest of the survey. So it's a great process, and we certainly encourage everybody to participate. Postcards will be going out to every single house in this town about this study. They should be in mailboxes and P.O. boxes tomorrow and or Wednesday. Okay, so please participate. And then I have included 2 public hearing notices I thought you might be interested in. One is the town of Grafton. They did they're doing a public hearing, or they did a public hearing last Monday for a 2.9 megawatt solar facility at 44 Eastbrook Ave. So I'm just kind of keeping track of what's being permitted out there. And again, last week, Cureleaf, Massachusetts, did a special permit site plan process, or started that in Oxford, Mass, for a retail recreational site at 425 Main Street in Oxford. So I'm just keeping you abreast of things I think you might be interested in.
Do you know the results of either one of these hearings?
I do not know the results, no. As soon as we will get notice from the same towns about any decisions, and then I'll put those in your file as well. The yellow file folder contains more or less interesting mail and hearing notices. And then kind of related to the housing discussion, if Wally, could you just give a brief synopsis of your appearance before the Sutton Board of Selectmen?
Sure. Last Tuesday night, Michelle Edelstein from the director of the Senior Center and myself gave a presentation to the Board of Selectmen showing the aging of the community of Sutton. And this started last fall when we went to a Central Mass Regional Planning meeting, and the whole topic was on aging in general, not specific to Sutton. So a few items that we thought were rather important. And the purpose of this was to just introduce this to the board. We weren't asking for anything specific, but just to make them aware of what's going in reality. The first topic would be The current median age in the United States is 37.6. Median means half the people are over that age, half the people are under that age. That's 37.6. Massachusetts is 39. Worcester County is 39. And Sutton is 41. So currently, we are average 4 years older than the United States and 2 years older than the Commonwealth. The population increased between 2010 to 2017. We had a population increase of 76 people, which is 0.8 tenths. Now, when the census determines age and population, this is the U.S. Census, and this is the standard for all of this. It's 0 to 20, 21 to 40, 41 to 60, and 60 over. So that's the numbers, that's our baseline for all these numbers. So from 2010 to 2017, the population of Sutton grew by 0.8%. The number of seniors grew by 40%, which is a very significant number. Okay, now, what we're trying to do is assess what they call the age friendliness of your community. So these are just some of the criteria that we could use. Jen's already mentioned housing, which is certainly a significant part. Okay, how friendly is your community to the older members of the community? And what criteria determines age friendliness? Okay, social services and organizations, a housing variety, walkability available in other transportation systems, activities, events, and places geared towards older residents, public spaces, and a healthcare environment. These are the things that would be much more important to an older person than a younger one. The projections for the year 2030, which sounds like it's a long ways away, but it's like a little over 11 years away. It's not really that far. The town, and these are the estimates that come out of the CMRP and the U.S. Census, et cetera. The population in 2010 was 8,963. It's estimated to go to 10,040 in 2030. The percentage of Sutton population, 0 to 20, in 2010 was 28% were under 20. 2030, 20% will be under 20, so that's a decline. 60 and over, 2010 was 15%, 2030 will be 36%. And to put these numbers in another to show you the total increase, the town's population will increase by 12%, and the number of seniors will increase by 125%. So there's going to be a significant shift in the demographics of the community. That was basically, we did get into some other questions, issues. The major areas that we can see, and this is very general, Jen has mentioned housing is one, transportation is another one, and for lack of a better word, we'd call a sense of community, where people can have activities and things to do and socialize with other people rather than sit at home by themselves. And there's been studies done that people's mental and physical capabilities decrease dramatically if they do not have this social interaction with others. And the question will be, what can we do?
Great, thanks so much, it's an important issue.
Thanks, Wally. We also have to do a CMRPC delegate. Is that something that's on the line?
Yes, every year we select a planning board delegate and the selectmen do an alternate. Wally is, of course, our current planning board delegate. So if you're ready to volunteer and or select a delegate tonight, we can do that, or you can push it to your next meeting if you'd like.
Would you like to do it again?
Yes.
Right.
Thank God, make a motion.
Yeah.
That should be pretty easy.
Do that quick before he changes his mind. You have a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm gonna make that motion quickly because it's important that Sutton be involved in the bigger picture. And I've been to regional planning commission meetings that don't make any sense to me. And they don't have toothpicks enough keep my eyes open, 'cause I don't even know what they're talking about. It's region-wide, but every once in a while, something like this comes up that makes sense, and we need to be plugged in. So we're at the bus station when the bus shows up.
Yep.
As opposed to, left,
In the dust.
the bus left and all the hearings took place and we can't access anything. So Wally, as long as you don't mind going.
I
There's a few
enjoy it.
meetings that won't be this exciting.
No, just for the general public, to give you an idea of some of the topics that we had, that was one, water was one, economic development was one, what they call disasters. And actually, the day we were having that meeting, it was a morning meeting, there was the shooting in Texas. They talk about everything from a shooting incident to a tornado to floods, and future weather projections and so forth and so on. So they're really right on target with things that they're out there somewhere, but we're gonna be approaching it.
Great.
All right, thanks, Wally. All right, so public hearing for 315 Central Turnpike. Shade Tree Scenic Road alteration. So, in accordance with the provisions of Mass General Law C-40, 15C, and C 87-3, Scenic Road Law and Public Shade Tree, as well as Article 15 of the Sutton General Bylaw, Scenic Roadways, the Planning Board will hold a public hearing on the application of Rafferty and Rafferty Builders, Inc., 95 Church Street, Whitensville, Mass. The applicant requests permission to remove one 8-inch maple tree and a section of remains of a stone wall in order to install a driveway and related pipe culvert for a new single-family home located at 315 Central Turnpike. The hearing will be held in the third-floor meeting room at the Town Hall, 4 Uxbridge Road, Sutton, Mass, on Monday, July 30th, 2018 at 7:10 p.m.
I just want to make a point before you go on. Unlike in your other meeting room, as you can hear when
Yep.
Jonathan speaks, these microphones do project your voice if you're sitting close to them enough, which does help, obviously, what everybody can hear out there. So when you're speaking, if you could just get a little bit closer to them, that might help hear you better.
Can everybody hear me all right? All right.
Norman Gamache from Guerrero and Helena, I'm representing the applicant. The property is located, excuse me, on the southerly side of the Central Turnpike. It's approximately halfway between the intersection of Purgatory Road and the Central Turnpike and Uxbridge Road and the Central Turnpike. The property consists of about 4.68 acres of land. And the purpose of the application is to construct a 12-foot wide driveway from the Central Turnpike onto this lot. The location is pretty limited. There are wetlands on the easterly and westerly side of the site, so we're approximately splitting the lot and coming in off of the Central Turnpike. We did submit some photographs of the access. I don't know if you have them up there.
I will put them up there.
If-
I've got a map up there.
I do have copies in color if you want,
Photograph.
for the members.
There we go.
Yeah, I'd like to see that copy, please.
Yours isn't in color?
Huh? I'd like to see it.
I've got enough for,
You should have them on your.
Yeah.
so.
Okay, this is fine. I got them.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're up there as well, Norm.
So basically, there's an 8-inch maple tree that is within the public way that we anticipate having to remove because we have to install a culvert there because there's a drainage ditch. Drainage ditch is also considered a wetland. So we are dealing with the Conservation Commission to get that permit. And there's the remainder of the stone wall that has to be removed. What's left of the stones will be used on each side of the driveway, so we won't be taking them off-site. So I think that pretty much complies with the bylaw. Really is no other way to get into this property. It's only frontage is on the Central Turnpike.
Is there any plans to improve the wall on either side of the driveway, or is it just going to stay kind of a remnant rubble wall at this point in time?
At this point, I believe it's just gonna stay a remnant rubble wall.
Okay. It looks like to me there's like not very many pieces of the wall within that
Right, I
within the
think at some
bounds.
point prior to my client owning the property, the site was tested for septic system, and I think that portion of the wall might have been disturbed at that point. But the two stakes that you see in the photograph with flagging on them, those designate the limits of what the 20-foot driveway would be. The rest of the trees between where the driveway will go and the Central Turnpike are all just minor saplings.
All right. Any questions from the board?
Those aren't tree stumps laying over the word proposed driveway? Those culverts or what?
Oh, that's a culvert pipe, right?
Yeah, that's a culvert.
Just fell off someone's truck?
This project was started and the order of conditions ran out. And so we are in the process of re-permitting the site,
Okay.
Conservation and Planning Board. So they actually started construction, but did not realize that their order of conditions had
Okay.
expired, so the pipe was left there.
I think those pipes have been there for 5 or 6 or 7 years, actually.
They've been there for quite a while.
Enough time for the maple to grow.
Yeah, maple grew up. That's that girth of the flower.
Any questions from the public? Please state your name and address.
Sharon Kent, 24 King Road, Sutton, Mass. I would like to know if if they are using the old perk test and the septic system area where they have done. And the next question I have, where is the culvert going to go and the excess water? Which way is it gonna run? Because I live across the way.
You do have a plan of the lot with that shown on your iPad?
The house is planned to be at the rear of the lot because there are wetlands in the front, as well as the septic system. The current testing for the septic system has expired and we have to go back and retest the lot. But before we can do that, we have to be able to build the driveway to get onto the lot without crossing the wetland and disturbing it. Regulations have changed since the original approval for conservation, so we need to be able to build a driveway to get back on the site to retest the lot.
So
In
no
terms of excess water, the pipe is there just to allow the passage of water along the existing ditch. There shouldn't be an increase of any runoff from the driveway. Basically, the pipe is just there to allow the drainage ditch to continue to flow where it flows now.
There's a blow up on the screen there that appears to illustrate what you were just talking about, that you're putting in the pipe within the existing swale to just continue to convey water under the driveway?
Yes, that's correct. Because actually, the pipe is going into a wetland, because the ditch is considered a wetland in Sutton. It's become vegetated over time. And so, we have to actually create additional wetlands along the edge of the wetland there in order to compensate for the volume of the pipe. And that is currently under discussion with the Conservation Commission.
And do you know anything about the perk test?
I do know that it was previously, there was a septic system design that was previously approved, but the testing and the approval of that plan have expired also. So once we get the driveway in, we'll be able to go back and retest the lot. We have no reason to believe that it won't test out similar to what it was before. And if the size of the septic system creates an issue where we have to go back to the Conservation Commission, we'll have to do that. But currently, the septic system and the house are outside the 100-foot buffer zone to the wetlands on the site.
Okay. Does that answer your question?
Partially. There is a culvert that goes across, is that new culvert going to hitch up with the old culvert that goes under the road and drains out into my field? I know you're going to be putting in to have the water run down the road, but it doesn't run all the way into my property. And
Well-
has flooded a field. I'm just curious where the drainage is going to go. Is it going to continue through the pipe onto me or go down the ditch?
The way the culvert we're installing is designed, all it's gonna do is continue to allow the water to flow from one side of the pipe to the other. It's not gonna change the drainage pattern in the ditch, so if that ditch, if the water flows by the front of this lot and into the culvert that goes across the street, it's gonna continue to do that. We can't obstruct, that drainage flow. If we did, then we'd be impacting the wetlands even more, and that's not allowed. So we have to maintain the continuity in the ditch.
I'm very concerned and hope that they can do what they are saying.
So still has to go before Conservation Commission, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, so this is still going through the process. So we'll note your concerns and make sure that we can forward them on to the Conservation Commission. And so when they take up this, they can address it for you. All right?
Thank you.
Any other questions from the public? All right.
You do have departmental comments. Our highway superintendent is also our tree warden now and had no comment or concern with the removal of that 1 8-inch maple. There is a comment here from Keith Downer, the chair of the Historic Commission, just requesting that the reuse of the existing stones, and that if you use those existing stones within the lot, that you maintain the same type of wall structure, so it's consistent. And they have said that they don't believe there's an adverse impact historically on the removal of the 8-inch tree.
All right. All right, do we have a motion?
You have 2 applications before the board. You can address them both in one
Okay.
motion, and then just include the wording about the stones remaining on the property in the same.
I'll make that motion for both.
That's to grant the scenic road and public shade tree alteration per the materials presented, conditioned on keeping those stones on the property. And if they're reused in a wall configuration, it be the same type of wall.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right,
We have a motion to close?
yep, good.
Motion to close the hearing?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Will you be sending that permit out, or someone pick it up?
I will get that typed up tomorrow
Okay.
and put it on file, and I can mail you a copy. If someone would rather pick it up, they can do that as well.
Okay, I'll let you know.
Okay?
Thank you.
You bet.
All right, the 7:20 public hearing for Prime Metals Manufacturing, 85 Gilmore Drive. In accordance with the provisions of the Sutton zoning bylaw, sections 3.A.4, table of use regulations, 4C, site plan review, VD Route 146 overlay district, and 7A.2, special permits, and planning board will hold a hearing on the application of King Riviera LLC. The applicant intends to construct a 180,000 square foot facility with 140,000 square feet of manufacturing and 40,000 square feet of offices at 85 Gilmore Drive. The facility will be the home of Prime Metals Technologies. The hearing will be held at the Sutton Town Hall, 3rd floor, on Monday, July 30th, 2018 at 7:20 p.m. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Michael Domenico. I'm with King Street Properties. We're the developer for the project. And I'm joined by Rob Elfer, our architect for the project with Studio Troika, and Travis Brown from Andrews Engineering, who's our civil engineer. By way of background, King Street Properties is a local Boston-based developer with a focus on developing space for innovative science, technology, and manufacturing companies. We're excited to be working with Prime Metals because they're a great American story of a company who's still actually producing a tangible product. And even though they've been in operation since the 1920s in their facility, in their current facility, they're still finding new and innovative ways to make their process more efficient. Prime Metals is a company that's passionate about their business, and they're going to bring hundreds of jobs to Sutton. This project's not only good for the town, but good for Prime Metals, who deserves a first-class facility that'll keep their business running for another 100 years. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Travis, who's going to walk you through the site plan and give you a general overview of the project.
If anybody wants to, just give us a minute. If anybody wants to shift or move your chairs around so you can see better, feel free. Give you a minute or two. You good?
Actually, I have a question as part of your intro. What is Bimetal's business model or plan? What do you guys do?
Prime Metals manufactures equipment that's used by steel mills all across the world to actually produce their steel. So all the gears and parts that are used in steel mills are produced by Prime Metals.
And they'll be made here.
Yes.
Good evening, Travis Brown with Andrews Survey and Engineering. Just going to walk you through the site plan I have here in front of me, a colored rendering kind of the overall site. This is Sutton Commerce Park, so Gilmore Drive. There's a number of industrial buildings constructed in this. This is a vacant lot at the end of the cul-de-sac. The cul-de-sac ends here. We intend to access through the end of the cul-de-sac into the facility. 146 is here at the bottom of the page. Also Barnett Road is here. It abuts with some wooded area between the facility and Barnett Road. There's a close-up of the facility. This is the end of Gilmore Drive, so the site will be accessed through that cul-de-sac down into this area, which provides employee parking. There's a number of parking spots in this area here. Also, this is the front of the building. There's some parking here along the front where we have handicapped van accessible spaces, and we'll kind of provide some car pool spots in those locations as well. Access will be maintained through here to the rear of the building with some additional parking areas for employees. This facility has two loading docks, traditional loading docks in this location, also a truck access where trucks physically enter into the inside of the building in the rear. So these trucks that get to that, those loading docks would access through Gilmore Drive, would come around this turn here, and back into these loading docks, allowing sufficient room for cars to be able to move through there, trucks to be able to move through there as those vehicles are unloading. For the trucks in the rear, those will be accessed through the same route, except they will continue on this path here, pull into this area, and they will back into the facility where they will be unloaded. There's minimal noise as far as that. Any forklifts for unloading will be done inside the building. This building will be serviced by public sewer that's already available in Gilmore Drive. Also available public water line that's available there too. We've provided drainage on this site, mostly underground infiltration areas. We do have a basin back in this location here as well. So we've received comments from Jen. We've had some discussions with Jen, working through those comments, also peer review. We've been working through some comments from Graves Engineering as well. We've provided Jen with a revised waiver request list today, as well as a response to
Do we have
those
that?
comments and a draft A&R plan that would ultimately divide this parcel into two parcels. I think that covers the site engineering. I'll turn it over to Rob to discuss the architecture of the building.
So, sort of one answer to Scott is one of your questions is what do they do? So when I was driving here today, I passed by the existing site, which is, it's actually Worcester, which is been there for 100-something years. It's Morgan Industries, so there's a huge history behind that company. Prime Metals is kind of a more recent name for it, but Morgan is roots in Worcester have gone on for 100 years. And they really, working with Prime Metals for a couple of years trying to develop this site, it's really been fun talking to them because these are the people who really built the steel to build America, and they built the steel mill. So it's a really amazing company. And then driving in Sutton, as we started to study Sutton and look at what you guys have here, you look back to the history, the industrial history, and you sort of see the mill buildings, and you see, actually, the one that really kind of caught our eyes, the blacksmith shop, which I know is pretty historical here, but that's what this is. This is kind of the modern version of that. So as we're trying to design this project, Prime Metals takes a lot of pride in what they're trying to do with this building. They're not trying to build the blank factory Costco warehouse here. They really want to build a great building. They bring people from all over the world to this facility. So it's actually a real showcase for them as well. So it's really a modern manufacturing facility, which there are very few. This is what we're trying to do in America, and they're trying to do it in a really great way. So what we've done in the design, as you'll start to see on it, is this is sort of one of the primary views as you're kind of coming up, backing up here, the road, this is this corner, that's what you're seeing on this building. So from 146, just to have a certain amount of presence on it, because the primary office component of the building is pulled back, we're using sort of a signature material, which is going to be a colored perforated metal. So we're trying to work with materials that really speak to what this company does, so steel. So this piece over here, with a little bit of signage, you can see a little bit over here. Apologize for the colors, they're not supposed to be pink, they're supposed to be orange, but sometimes printers do funny things too. So that's kind of the view coming into the site, and as you sort of see, what you're seeing is about a 200 here. So the building is basically, this is that corner, so it's about a 260 by 550 foot long single-story building, 35 feet high. That's the main manufacturing plant. The primary entrance in the office building is a two-story, 200 by 100 foot office building. The office building height is on lower, it's 28 feet, 29 feet right now. So we've kind of scaled the office part back to sort of break up the mass of the building. As we talked about, the primary entry is actually over here. We'll have employee entrances on this side and this side to sort of split around the parking. So you have different sort of shift work coming in on the sides and sort of the office entry, visitor entry at the front of the building. Any questions on any of this, please stop me. So the facades of the building, the front of the building this is looking at the office component. And I'll show you the materials on it. What we're using is the primary factory building is one type of a really high energy efficient insulated metal panel. So we're going to use one type of panel predominantly around that piece. And we're playing around with a little diversity of color on it. The secondary office component has a sort of a smoother, more architectural finish on the insulated metal panels. And it's got some pretty nice vertical components of glass that kind of breaks up the facade. So it's really trying to look like a pretty elegant office building in this case. So I'm trying to break up those masses. So you see it's sort of this is the front building on 146, which you really cannot see any of this. The front of the office buildings and sort of the two sides elevations. Slightly closer up views of what we're trying to do on the building. So what you're starting to see on the front office building, this orange piece over here, is that's where on the office side and the entry we're also kind of reusing that orange corrugated metal panel, perforated metal panel, so it's an architectural feature. So you see it from a distance, so when you come up to the building you actually have that same material, so kind of playing around with those ideas. And there's that same idea of that signature piece that starts to face 146, which you'll see in a second. So these are different site views of the building again. So again, coming up the main road, sort of aerial perspective of the building, front entry, so we start to see the two pieces coming together. So those are the primary architectural features of the building, the two different type of metal panel systems in this corrugated material. Blowing up the materials that we were talking about, so this is actually the color we're really going for, not the hot pink, but the actual orange here, which is actually Prime Metals color. So it's sort of a semi-translucent material. The idea is we probably have a little bit of lighting behind it, so you get a little pop of color to it and lighting on it. Not so much on the 146 side, but definitely on the entrance of the office side. So you start to see the effect of those kind of materials. These are the different metal panel systems we're looking for. So for the primary building would be this one, and for the office building would be this one. So they're pretty handsome materials. As I said, very high efficiency. I don't know how much we want to get into various views, but I know through our process going through with Jen, we've studied a whole bunch of different views of the building from different points in the site, so we can get into them a little bit deeper if anybody wants, but I don't want to bore you with every view that we've done. Any questions on any of this? I'm just kind of glossing over the general look and feel of the building.
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's it. We were just gonna give a high-level overview and then answer any questions that anybody had.
Anybody on the board have any questions? Right now? Anybody from the public? All right.
Hi, Melody Steerheim, 24 Barnett Road. Actually, I can see my house on your first slide there.
Okay.
Just some basic environmental questions as far as hours of operation, peak hours, so that as a neighbor, I can kind of gauge, do I have anything to worry about as far as excess light at night, excess noise at night, the types of waste and energy that might be given off. You're talking about an insulated metal. Is that to maintain, limit any kind of heat?
Yeah, it's to create a high efficiency building, so they're trying to create a very airtight, high efficiency building, so it's got a high insulation value all around it.
Okay.
It's trying to be a fairly environmental building for what we're trying to do with it.
And the same thing question on other waste, like post-production waste. Are they, I mean, I know you have sewer, and I'm presuming that's for normal sewer use, but do you have you have a disposal system or process that you go through so that there wouldn't be anything to worry about as far as leaching into?
No, they have a very controlled operation. It's basically a giant mill shop, if you like. So what they're doing is probably the primary byproduct of their operations is a metal slab that comes off, and then drilling through a piece of metal, and they collect all that very carefully, and there's value in that, so they control it, and that gets sort of reused and recycled to the extent that probably those folks could probably explain that better than me, but that's what I thought.
Yep. Yeah, there is no, Bill Wheeler,
Yeah.
18 Watson, Prime Metals, Director of Operations. So there is no processing waste other than literally metal chips that are recycled. Steel is the most heavily recycled product in the world. So as we take a hunk of metal and we machine it into the component that we use in our product, right, we end up with these metal chips that get processed. We go through a recycling process off-site, right, that's carried away.
Okay, and then just as far as that parking lot that is on the Barnett Road side, I mean, lighting and stuff, minimal.
Yeah, all lighting now.
Yeah, we've done lighting calculations to show that there's no light shed onto other properties. And then just one thing to re-point out that Travis was describing, the loading dock that's on that side of the building, the trucks fully drive into there. So anything that's being loaded onto the truck, there's not a truck that's sitting out in the parking lot. It's fully inside the building, so whatever's being loaded on there is all happening inside, which is good for noise and any other disruption.
Yeah, that's that corner over here, so you can see the truck actually drives into the building that way, and that's that one over there.
And then as far as just operations, is this going on 24/7? I mean, would there be trucks driving down the road 24/7? I mean, do you have peak out, I mean, do you have peak volumes where you're more active during the day, that type of thing?
Yeah, Bill can go into a little bit more detail of it, but just from a manufacturing building in general, the traffic on this site is very light in terms of truck traffic. Most of the trucks are, FedEx, UPS trucks. I mean, there's probably less than 10 or 15 trucks a day in total, including UPS trucks that would come to the site. So it's not like it's a big distribution facility where there's hundreds of trucks coming in and out every day. But Bill, maybe you can talk a little bit about the shift work.
Yeah, but we will operate 3 shifts. We currently do today, and obviously the peak is the first shift, so the normal working hours, from 7 to 3 to 4:30, that kind of thing. And that's when the trucking activity does take place, is during the day. And then the second and third shifts, which then carry us through into the evening and through the night, are just literally regular cars that people drive up to go to work. So no trucking traffic during second and third shift.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Anybody else from the public?
Yeah, I've got a question. Jason Smith, 86 Barnett. Hard to tell from the drawings, but, what is the distance from the back side of that, the Barnett Road side of that building to Barnett Road? Do you have a feel for what that is?
Travis, you could probably estimate what that is. It's,
Probably talking 650, are you saying to these residents? here,
Well,
or
actually to the road.
Or to the road.
It's about 600 feet, that building's 550.
A little bit more, yeah.
600 to 650 feet to the road.
Any sense for what the noise level outside of the building might be? Or is everything gonna be pretty well contained and?
Yeah, it's pretty minimal. All their, if you ever see their processes, they're all very self-contained. I mean, they have these CNC machines where a piece of steel is literally just being routed. There's not any really loud pounding or any other noises. There's no big mechanical units on the roof that are
Big
throwing
presses in
machines.
the building or
There
anything?
are no presses in that.
Okay.
Everything is milling and drilling.
Okay.
And again, the operations, do obviously make noise inside the building, but it
Right.
doesn't emanate outside. And as Rob already pointed out, any sort of that loading that we do with that, by pulling the truck in, right, all of that chain fall activity and
Right.
rattling around takes place inside the building.
Okay.
There's almost no openings around essentially the factory, so
Right. Okay.
it's a really weak spot for sabotage.
Right.
All right, Bob?
I was happy to see the trucks backing in on the 146 side of the building, because we've been here a few times in this industrial park. You say these trucks drive into the building. Do they drive out, straight out, or do they have to back out? They do have to back out. Right. And you can't do anything about the beeping thing.
Well, they actually back into the
I'm sorry,
building and drive out of the building.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that's this location here. So they actually
the Barnett
drive.
Road, the backside, the Barnett Road side.
So the backing beeping sound actually moves
They
back
do have to back in.
to that location, yes.
Before they drive out.
First shift.
Right, that only happens during first.
But that beeper will be pointed at the building, directed
Right.
inside, and then
Better.
inside it. And then it drives out and then makes the turn.
In previous discussions with this site, and you can't change that, it's a safety requirement. They have to be.
Right.
Are these box trucks at that end, or are these 53 footers?
Yeah, so at the end that we're talking about where we drive in,
Yeah.
these are standard flatbed trucks. And so they'll have a big piece of equipment on it that will be offloaded, and we need to use a bridge crane to do that. Or alternatively, we're loading onto that truck, that's a piece of equipment that would be outbound. And again, the truck would just drive on out. So the box trucks will end up at the other dock.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the public? Any more from the board? Do we have any comments from departments?
Yes, you do. All right, on your iPad, and then I think almost all of them are on your iPad, but let's go through those. You have a letter from Graves Engineering dated July 27th. Travis can probably go through a response to most of those comments. But we'll go back to that one in a minute because it's the more detailed one. You have a comment letter from the town of Northbridge. They've requested to see the traffic study, so I did forward that to them on the 25th. They also had a question about the lot itself and ensuring that the lot itself in terms of width and depth meets the bylaws. The proponent did present what you have as a revised Form A here that I have not looked at in detail because it's really, really small. But Travis, if you could just kind of review how that lot now meets the requirements.
So we prepared a A&R plan to split this lot into two lots. So we provided the minimum of 100 feet of frontage on this cul-de-sac for this lot, comprised of about 13.8 acres roughly. We have the lot width of 100, at that 50-foot setback, and maintain that 100-foot lot width through that setback line.
So if you draw a straight line, any point in that front setback from side to side, and, you don't drop to less than 100.
On that curve. I mean, we can provide a line, I'll have to confirm that, but yes, we can provide that
Okay.
100 feet. This meets the regularity factor as a 0.5. So then the remaining land that we show would also have frontage here off of Gilmore, and that lot would come down, which also has frontage on Mendon Road, then continues in the back and has a large amount of frontage here on Barnett Road. So this hatched area that you see here is open space, which has been designated, as we've gone through these lots with the planning board. There's open space throughout the subdivision.
Which areas are open space?
So there's this hatched area here that's associated with Lot 9A, which is about 3.5 acres. And this hatched area here would be open space, which is about 13.5 acres.
If you'll recall, when the industrial park was created, we did open space as a function of the entire park. So again, on your iPads, you have the open space plan for the entire park. So I requested they resubmit that plan so I could compare it to the site plan and make sure they weren't encroaching on any of the required open space that was originally approved and required by the board.
That's what this was.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so, so that was the comment from the Toronto Northbridge gets concerns wanting to look at the traffic study. So if you could just touch, I think you touched on it briefly, that you did not think traffic would go over 20 or so vehicles a day. There was a traffic memo submitted, and they ran a traffic study in accordance with the ITE, the Institute of Traffic Engineer, just general industrial classification that came up with much larger numbers. But then in the traffic study, they said basically this facility, which has been in operation for a very long time, so they know exactly what it produces for truck trips, in a similar sized facility would not generate more than 2 trucks in the peak hour. So it's pretty minimal in terms of traffic flow. Correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. Robert Nunemacher of the Board of Assessors submitted some comments. Have you addressed those comments? Did you want to run through those?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, so the first one was the plan and deed references on the site plan. There was more current plans than what we were referencing. We have provided plans to show those new references. Just mentioned that the Gilmore Drive is owned by the town of Sutton, Heath, Hook and Cage. Number 4, so this had to do with the A&R and splitting this up, trying to get to that 100 feet of frontage, which we've demonstrated that we have here, as well as the lot width. The plan shows proposed lot boundary lines, remaining land. I guess just bringing up the issue if there's 2 conforming lots. I mean, we're showing you that this one is conforming. We have frontage for this one. We're calling that remaining land on this plan.
So are you currently calling it not buildable remaining land, or we really haven't gotten into that?
We haven't really gotten into that. We made sure that the parcel that we're working on.
The subject parcel is compliant.
So then the other question was, there is a town easement that exists out here. It's a drainage easement. There's actually a drain manhole in that easement that we'll be tying our drainage into. That access road to be able to access into this parcel will run through that easement. That was the extent, I think, of the comments.
Okay, the fire department said, please see the chief's comments from the pre-construction meeting. No additional comments since then. Those comments largely centered around circulation around the whole building, which has been provided, as well as hydrant locations, if you can just point to the hydrant locations. And I believe there was general agreement that wherever he needs those will go.
So we have provided hydrants, so we're tapping the water line, there's an existing water line that runs down the access road that goes out to Mendon Road. So we're gonna tap that water line, bring the water into the site. Gate valves here, gate valves, so we're gonna provide a hydrant in this location here. In this access area here where the trucks would turn, we would have one in that island. And we would also provide one at the rear of the building. Which would be in this location here. So there'd be 3 total hydrant locations, 2 at the front of the building and then 1 towards the rear of the building.
All right. The police chief had no comments. The Board of Health noted that if there is cafeteria in this building, all food service requirements must be met. The Conservation Commission will see this plan, but they did note that there might be a previous order of conditions for a project not built on this site that may need to be, you might need to request a certificate of compliance under a project not built.
Yeah, I think Joyce said mislabeled that property. I don't believe it's for this piece.
Oh, okay.
Now, there may be one for this piece, I don't know, but I think the one that she mentioned doesn't apply to this piece.
All right, okay. And then there are comments from myself and the town's consulting engineer. I did receive a letter of response, which I haven't gone through in full detail yet, because we were in the middle of our 4,000 piece mailing today on the housing study. I'm hoping all those are addressed. We can certainly go through them one by one if you want. And then Graves Engineering, I don't know if you want to go through those, but how we work those is Graves submits their comments, you submit their response, and then they'll go back, and ultimately what the board wants to see is a Graves letter, and at the end of each one where it says acknowledged. So that all of their comments have been addressed. The board has some various things that they are gonna need to take action on, and you just kinda need to decide how and when you want to do that. You have some waiver requests, and some of the waivers will drive design changes if they're not granted. So maybe you want to look at some of those waiver requests and get those voted on if you feel you have sufficient information to do that. And then there are 3 permits that were requested. One is for the special permit for the manufacturing use, and as you know, you would go through the 5 main criteria in the bylaws to consider and decide whether the use is appropriate at this location. Then there is the Route 146 overlay permit, which focuses on architecture and landscaping, but also incorporates things like slope protection, open space, traffic, and the like. And then finally is site plan review, which is all the detailed things, the hour of operations, the number of parking spaces, all of those very, very, trash dumpster locations, all of that detail. So, you may not be at a point where you can act on site plan review, I would say, and you may not feel comfortable acting on Route 146 overlay. I definitely think you have an opportunity to review and maybe act on some, if not all, of the waiver requests. And you may even feel comfortable once you look at the 5 criteria or review that again, on deciding whether you want to act on the special permit solely for the use.
I'd like to review the waivers.
Okay, so you have the updated list that came to you today. It's got a date stamp on it in the upper right corner.
Mr. Chair. Just another question. And this park is built out now?
No.
There's nothing else coming
Yes,
after this?
there is.
There is one more.
Yes, this is only 19 acres of that lot. So you have another potential lot, maybe even two, but at least one more lot that could be built within the park.
Down the road.
Right.
And so along with that question then, Gilmore Drive actual road layout, it looks like you're gonna peel off the end of the cul-de-sac that's there and go onto your lot. So
That's
The road
correct.
will have to be continued at some point
No,
to
what he's,
Gilmore Drive?
what they're doing right
Am I reading
now
that
is
right?
they're doing, right now, they're using the existing cul-de-sac and they're pulling in a drive for this building and intend to do a common drive easement. Now, I have already called out that we need to review, the board will need to look at the bylaws and see if that's even open for use, a common drive for an industrial use, or if they're gonna need to extend the cul-de-sac. But again, we're really focusing on this development, and it's certainly, in its configuration, pulling a driveway off Gilmore Drive into this site is obviously very legal, and you just may have some bylaw adjustments and or different configurations to think about for any subsequent use on that other parcel. They do have frontage on Mendon, but they cannot access Mendon Road. So they would have to get a ruling from the board, even if their frontage on Mendon Road qualified as legal frontage, that they would access from Gilmore Drive. As you see on a lot of residential lots where you have like a corner lot or a lot that touches another street, if it makes more sense in terms of topography or safety or whatever, to be able to access off another road, the board can make that determination in open meeting. Long time ago, when we did the industrial park originally, it was agreed very strongly that no industrial traffic would access Mendon Road.
But the remaining land and its frontage on Gilmore Drive, is that suitable at this time? Or you're saying it's not? I'm not sure,
Not sure.
not sure.
Nope.
So
The
part
ex-
of that access road kind of runs down where that lot would enter. So there would be a common drive through here and then up here potentially to service any lot that would go in here. That access would be through another area in the
And
cul-de-sac.
who owns that lot now?
The same owner owns this entire road.
Right. So as part of this process, or shortly after this process, whatever you prefer, we need to take a look at the definition of common drive and kind of take a look at the layout of the Form A. Obviously, what they've proposed for this lot is a legal lot, and it's fine. The board certainly can condition that that Form A plan be signed, and which would force action on kind of figuring out what's going on the second lot or labeling it non-buildable for the time being until that's all figured out. So you know you're permitting on a legal lot.
Yeah, I don't know about the rest of the board, but I prefer to treat this case for what's before us, and then,
And where I can agree with that,
Yeah.
what I'm concerned about is that we box something in and we have sat here and created a future hardship. And so you created this, you allowed this to happen, now what are you gonna do about it? I don't wanna be put in that position.
Yeah.
go ahead, Bob.
And preface this by saying I'm thrilled to have you considering moving to Sutton, because we need this kind of business in our tax structure. So I don't want you to think my comment is negative in any stretch. Feels like 100 years ago, Bank of America came in and had a design for a building at the corner of Boston Road. And everyone laughed, and I was afraid I chased them out when I said it looks like George Jetson's bank. It was so modern, it was all glass, and it was neat, but it was supposed to kind of have a mill feeling. Fortunately for us, they came back in and drove around Sutton, found cupolas, different pitched roofs. Just something that was unique to only Sutton is that they'd never seen so many buildings with different pitched roofs on them. The cupola stuck out, and I'm colorblind, so the color doesn't matter to me. But it's I see it for the first time tonight, and it's boxy. but you got a job to do, and you gotta be energy efficient and all that other stuff. But if you could make it Blackstone, Millie, funky, I don't know what that takes, but if there's anything you could do that would just make it feel like Sutton, in industry in Sutton, I'd appreciate the effort. But I don't want you to stop the project because of that comment. All right. Go ahead, Joe.
All right, so let's review the waivers.
All right. Roman numeral 4B3, off-street parking and loading requirements. The applicant requests a waiver to not construct the number of parking stalls required per table 4. Parking stalls proposed provide adequate parking for the workforce with overlapping shifts. And similarly with the loading standards, the applicant requests a waiver to not construct the number of loading spaces required per table 5. The loading spaces proposed are adequate for the proposed manufacturing facility needs. Can you just elaborate what the bylaw would require and what you're requesting?
Yeah, so the bylaw as far as number of parking spaces, let's see, would require 1 space per 750 square feet of manufacturing, and then office would be 1 space per 250. So we're looking for a reduction in parking down to 295 spaces that are what this facility needs. It doesn't need the, required parking in the table and create excess impervious area and spaces likely not to be used.
What would the number, without the waiver, what would the number be?
Total.
Total required would be 351, based on the calculation. We're asking for 295. That's taking into account all the employees employed there on the 3 various shifts.
So they're all hanging out at once?
They were all there at once. The number that we're requesting or providing still is
Works.
greater than the number in those 3 shifts.
Has there been any consideration in this for employee expansion? Since we're looking at a long-term project?
So I can answer that. So we're actually, our ability to expand will be by just having, some of our employees are close to retirement, if you will. In addition, we're actually moving a product line called Moog Oil over to our Warren, Ohio facility. So in a way, we're creating an expansion space already. We're gonna have about 10 to 15% of our population either retire or go to Warren, and then that allows us to have those seats available for future, more long-term, younger people.
Thank you.
Great answer.
All right, and then you've already described your loading process and the number of trucks, so I don't know that we need more detail on that.
Yeah.
So,
Make a motion to grant that waiver.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yes, if they can't fit all the employees on their site, then they shouldn't be allowed to park in the road.
they can't, it's a public
So you have-
street.
So you have to like double park and triple park and cause your own inconvenience, but other than that, I'm fine.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, next waiver.
All right, so we're dealing with, last one you were doing parking and loading spaces, right? All right, so, 4B5A, landscaping adjacent to a street right-of-way. Within the required yard setbacks, let me see, the applicant requests a waiver from this landscaping requirement due to the configuration of the property relative to the right-of-way of Gilmore Drive. Due to the configuration, due to the configuration and from landscaping on the abutting property at 83 Gilmore Drive, NEDT, the intent of the bylaw is met. So if you could just flip to the landscaping plan and just review that.
This is the landscape plan that was provided. Here's the access off Gilmore. It doesn't quite show Gilmore, but this is the NEDT property, which has landscaping kind of on this lot line too. So what we've done is we've provided parking 10 feet off the lot line, and within that 10 feet, we've done landscaping, which basically mimics what was done on NEDT, so we don't have that 15 feet of width for landscape area.
Any comments from the board?
Okay, NEDT. So it's a total, between the two of you, it's a total of about 20 feet between the two.
20 feet, yep.
How does that look today? How is their landscaping look on that side of the, I don't see that, I didn't go down there, is it?
It's actually fairly well maintained last time I was out there. It's relatively slow growing, but I mean, it seems very well maintained. It's not really meant for screening, like you're not gonna screen either of these buildings with that landscaping. It really is just green space and kind of breaks up the visual effect of the paving and the NED side where the dumpsters are dropped, the empty dumpsters are dropped from their operations.
Is your landscaping same type of plants and things, so it blends right in, or is it totally different?
I think in general it's the same. I don't know if it's the exact same species, but it's the same type. I mean, I could look back at the landscaping for NEDT and try to mimic that, what they've done.
I think if they were the same, it would kind of look like one. The waiver here before us is for the width from 15 to 10 feet.
Mm-hmm.
I make a motion to grant that waiver.
Second.
Any discussion on the board? From the public?
Wayne, did you want to condition that?
Yeah.
Or that it be?
It should be
Similar.
similar.
I believe it was, but double check that.
All right, all those in favor? Aye.
All right, landscaping adjacent to contiguous properties. I actually think that was the, oh, no, that was the weird one, where kind of the entrance drive will be right up against the throat of the next lot, so there's really not, and there's a slope in between the two, so there's really not a bunch of landscaping in there. It's a stabilized slope. And then that goes to Route 146, which of course has the trees and the landscaping between the Park Road and Route 146. So there's no trees, there's just this slope in between the two potential, drives coming in, or I should say the property line and the drive coming in of the next lot over, because they sit side by side. So there's that one, and the same thing on the north side, if you could just point that out. That property line is right there, and you've got this, what could be a shared driveway in the future right up against that. So, are you okay with that, or do you want them like the intent of that is to then access into one or two other users as you move forward. That's why there's no landscaping shown along that lot line. You could potentially do a conditional again, so that if it's used as a common driveway, you wouldn't do landscaping, but if it's not used as a common driveway in the future.
How big is the slope over there at the property line?
Over here.
Yeah, it's a 1-to-1 slope, so about 20 feet, I believe, from the top down to that access road. So we're gonna use a slope stabilization product, and then that will be loamed and seeded there's no real opportunity to put plantings on this.
Is there a guardrail along that?
There is a guardrail.
I'm all right without the landscape in there. I mean, this is an industrial park. It's not a playground.
And the public doesn't drive down the street to get anywhere.
No,
It's the end of the
not
road.
generally unless they're lost.
Yeah, it's the end of the road.
Still like it to be pretty, but in this case, that, it doesn't, I don't see a detraction there.
That's fine.
If you can talk a little bit more about did you have any other concerns on that other one? Like I said, it's in a unique situation. The circulation drive is right up against the lot line because of the potential future configuration. So there's no landscaping at all.
So who's gonna own the meadow of, what'd you call it, meadow of wildflowers or something? Who's gonna take care of that?
Yeah, so that'll be actually split between this lot 9A that we're talking about and then that remaining land. So portions of that slope will be on both of those.
And that whole drive and that whole easement, there'll be an agreement between the ownership that gets maintained in common. So that would get maintained by this lot 9A as part of owning the responsibility for maintaining that easement.
Up to you.
Make a motion.
Makes sense in this particular case. If you're gonna make a motion, you just need to stress that this is a extremely unique situation. That normally you would
It is
obviously.
because it's an undeveloped parcel next door
Mhm.
that the whole purpose of the park is to have it developed into industrial.
Mhm.
Was that a motion?
So I'll make a motion for this waiver, granting the waiver for the area along the 146 side and the common line between the undeveloped lot, conditioning upon, I guess, developing the next lot. When that comes, there may have to be some kind of a landscape strip, whether it be on this lot or the next lot, we don't know yet. I guess it would depend on the entrance to that next lot. But like Scott said earlier, I don't wanna make this, with whatever the board does tonight, I don't wanna see this a self-inflicted hardship by either the proponent or the board. That's not the purpose of this meeting.
Second.
So, can we consider that, because I know a lot of the stuff that we look at, we may want to revisit lighting, for example, or we might want to review or come back and revisit
Absolutely, we
some
can
other component, and maybe
formulate
maybe
appropriate
this is an
conditions.
item that we
Revisit?
revisit if, we drive out there and something doesn't quite, it's harder to visualize this, looking at that drawing way over there, and what that's gonna look like, so, I don't know.
Right. It's typical for you to have the standard lighting condition. The board reserves the right to review lighting and landscaping post-construction to ensure that everything is meeting its the intent of the bylaw. So yeah, I would suggest that as you have on every other project, pretty much in the Route 146 overlay district, you would impose those same conditions. So that can be handled in the overall 146 approval and site plan approval as well.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, so the next waiver is, the requirement that bus shelters and bicycle racks be included. A bicycle rack has been proposed, however, the applicant requests a waiver from the requirement to provide a shelter for transit services, as these services will not be needed by the project proponent. This side of town is currently not served by the WRTA, is it? I think RTA only goes to Millbury right now, right? Yeah. So I don't. So.
Do all your employees have driver's license?
Yes. Hard to get there on a bicycle.
Or they carpool.
I have a motion.
I'll make a motion that we grant the waiver from,
The shelter, bus
bike
shelter.
racks.
No, the bike racks they included.
They're-
They just want a waiver from the bus shelter.
We're gonna ride a bike rack. Put the bike someplace else.
All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right.
So
Any-
does the bus shelter not serve as a smoking hut also, or is that not?
We can wait for Uber. We can wait for Uber.
Just checking.
All right.
Alrighty.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, 5D 4C3, parking shall generally be sited to the side or the rear. In this case, the building has a unique orientation. The front of the building faces south, so where the frontage is kind of on the southeast corner and along, it's just, there's no way to comply technically with this because of the strange configuration. You can see the applicant requests a waiver due to the proposed use and the business operation and the size and shape and the available land. More than 25% of the total parking spaces must be sited in front of the building. The design makes every effort to meet the requirement by increasing parking areas at the rear of the building, but wetland resource areas there create space limitations. So you've got to scatter it around with the way the building and the lot is laid out and the operations work inside the building. You really can't do it any other way. So they've done a really good job. We'll review it post-installation, but a really good job with landscaping to really kind of break up and mitigate that parking technically in front of the building.
Will your employees enter at different locations, being that the building's 550-something feet long?
Yes, as pointed out, there's a main office front entrance where primarily all the office folks will. And then on either side of that, there's also workshop or factory entrances where they can enter as well. So I think that's what we had laid out was a total of 3 access points for the employees. And the parking, as you saw, was spread out kind of almost equidistant, from all of that.
So I make a motion that we grant that parking waiver.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the sidewalks and pedestrian paths, they have proposed a paver walkway in front of the front door and for a certain distance either side. Beyond that, they are requesting concrete sidewalks, just standard concrete sidewalks as you wrap the building and approach all the different parking areas. So in front of the building is all brick block, and then it goes to concrete as you slide out farther.
Make a motion that we grant that waiver.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I think this is their property, this is not open, this is not a public space. I think some of this is for the public, say, in front of the grocery store or in the mall or whatever, so. I think this is fine. In my mind.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right. I'm just going through my review letter real quick to just make sure. several of these waiver requests are repeated from bylaw to bylaw. So site plan review has one for parking and 146 has one for parking. So when you're granting a waiver, any section that applies, I'm going to list both section numbers or all 3 section numbers. So, can you show where that dumpster is proposed?
So that dumpster is proposed at the rear of the building where that truck access is, so right in this location. We're gonna screen that with a vinyl fence on this side of that property, or on that side of the dumpster.
All right, cool. All right. I would say it looks like, just running through it quickly, that you've acted on the majority, if not all, of the waivers that are required. Which is great. So now you need to decide if you want to look at the criteria for the manufacturing use just itself, and if you want to do anything else with Route 146 overlay and or site plan review, or if you want to wait for the response letter from Graves.
I mean, my thought is that we can probably address the special permit, the use special permit, but as far as, you probably need to wait for Graves for at least the site plan. I don't know what your thoughts are around the 146 overlay.
That's up to you guys.
Yeah, I think the use is important at this point.
Yeah, I think we nailed that down today.
All right, so per your regulations, the criteria for grant of a use, you must make findings in open meeting relative to the 5 criteria in our zoning bylaw. Whether or not the site is appropriate for this use and why. The adequacy of public sewer and water, the effect of the developed use on the neighborhood, whether there will be undue nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians, and whether adequate and appropriate facilities are provided to ensure the proper operation of the use, structure, and condition. So, do you want to speak to any of those criteria? Why you think, why your argument, why the specific site is appropriate for this use?
Yeah, I mean, it's, as we all know, it's part of the industrial park. It's a vacant lot within that. This was intended to be used in this manner. This is, you know, a light manufacturing use. So it kind of fits into with the rest of the park, certainly.
So just as an understanding of that, this is a machining, a rolling, a machining, a cutting, a grinding, a welding type operation. There's no
Correct.
Hot work being forging,
Smelting.
smelting, that kind of stuff.
That's what our customers do, so
That-
we
okay.
make the machines that allow them to roll steel.
So they make the steel and send it to you so you can make the parts and send them back to them.
Interesting
Is
how
that
that
works?
It's a closed loop.
You do a lot of CNC work.
Right, so it's,
CNC work, yeah.
yeah, so lathes, milling machines, that kind of stuff, right? Not forgings, there's no melting of steel that we pour into cauldrons and, you know, add eye of newt or anything like that.
Aw.
We already determined from one of the comments, there's water and sewer at this facility.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So the effect of the developed use on the neighborhood,
But is it adequate? So in the use, in the operation of the facility, is the permit available for you to have adequate water and adequate sewer?
yeah, the application did go out to both the sewer department and Wilkinsonville Water. And, as is consistent with the response of the sewer and water, departments, I should say the sewer department and Wilkinsonville Water, if there's an issue, they call me immediately and let me know there's an issue. The sewer department's only concern was ones that we've heard here tonight, that no waste product would go to the sewer system. And that was confirmed to their satisfaction. And the water district did not have any issues as well. They did want the applicant to give them an estimate of what they thought the water use might be. So, which I believe that was very low because you don't really use it in your operations, it's just potable.
It's not
Right,
used
it's
in
not used in the process.
So, no, there's a brand new 16-inch line in the street for Gilmore Drive. Well, out in front of Gilmore Drive, I believe it's 10 or 12 inches coming up Gilmore Drive. No, it might even be 8. Might be 8. But 8-inch. Isn't cool, I'm looking at you. The water line coming up Gilmore Drive, 8 inches, you think? Do you remember, Travis?
Well, it's a 16-inch
In the
main
street.
that goes down,
Brand new.
we tap into, so.
8.
Yeah.
Okay, so big enough line, and they don't really need that much water because it's not used in their process.
And that is a different group, that's a different group getting water out of the ground, well water coming out of the ground.
Whitensville Water? Whitensville Water has a number of reservoirs right in Sutton,
Yeah, on Mendon Road,
and as well as several other water sources.
track those reservoirs.
But the majority of their surface water reservoirs are right in Sutton on Mendon Road.
Okay.
Mhm.
When we created the overlay district,
Mhm.
this company was probably Morgan Construction then. No one would ever dreamed that a business like this would come to this site. If there was ever a case where it's exactly what we were looking for, I think this, to
In
the
fact,
point where they don't even, they recycle everything that's left over, is pretty much, it fits the bill. I think it meets all the criteria.
Right.
Um,
I think
I don't think we'll have another one come down that'll have all this stuff going its way. There's, no one else that's been in the industrial park can say that.
I think he did have the neighbors speak to reasonable concerns, and I think that, as the board usually does, we should place conditions to make sure those concerns are addressed ongoing. As you know, we have a backup alarm issue at Ross Express every once in a while, and because it's a condition of their permit, we can call the operator and have a discussion with them and make it clear to them that there's gonna be a problem if they don't deal with the condition relative to backup beepers during 3 in the morning hours. So in terms of the effect of the developed use upon the neighborhood, by placing the standard conditions, you can deal with things like if the neighborhood hears noise, we can have the power within the conditions to work with the company to mitigate that noise, or, the lighting, I haven't seen the photometrics plan. I assume it's gonna go full cutoff to the line, but again, every once in a while, you get a strange situation in terms of the topography of the light compared to a topography of a house, even if it's 400 feet away, where it's a full cutoff light, but you still might be looking up into it as an abutter. And we wanna have the ability through the conditions to deal with that situation, to make adjustments after the installation, to make sure the neighbors, so that number 3 is met. So,
And again, just, the back of the building is how many, you said how far away it was from the next,
600.
house?
From Barnett Road, it was about 600 feet.
The
So what-
road itself?
So what's the closest home to either the building or the driveway?
Yeah, so there would be a house here, which is about probably 400 to 500 feet, and that's heavily vegetated from that house over pretty much in this location. So a good portion of that is already mature forest.
yeah, so you just wanna make sure you condition things.
So there's a buffer zone between the industrial park area and the residence, per the bylaw. I haven't heard anything about that. I'm assuming because of that, it's been met. That's what was said earlier. That's what this park was created for.
Right, yeah. I mean, this was rezoned in 39 years ago, in 19, I believe, 89, to take all these uses, so. And the residents have honed the allowed uses over the years.
Oh, the homes, yeah.
Honed, the residents have honed the uses.
But the OLI was done,
1989. Yeah. You talked about it in 1986 and 1987, but it was enacted in 1989, yes.
Poor Jen.
Before me, yes. Pre-me.
it was me, I was here.
Yeah, I was here. No one else was, Wayne wasn't even born yet.
So.
But it worked.
Undue
Oh, wow.
nuisance or serious hazard to the vehicles and pedestrians, you've added the circulation pattern on the site plan.
No pedestrians.
You seem to have demonstrated a pretty good plan to keep the trucks isolated from the worker, traffic, and to back it up safely into those docks. And, your traffic numbers per your report are pretty low.
I'm curious, on that teardrop that I see there, there's stripes on the paving to the fat side or to the
Yeah,
right?
so there would be a grass island, so then when you come around, this part of the pavement would just be striped, as you say. So those vehicles, it just provides a turning, movement for that truck to be able to
So it's
back.
sort of don't park here, even though it looks wide enough, don't park
Right,
here
to
kind of a
keep any
thing?
obstructions, because without that, those trucks wouldn't be able to make that turning movement.
Right.
Safety was a big aspect of this, and we work with Andrews Engineering pretty significantly on making sure that the trucks are not backing up into parked cars or oncoming traffic. And that's the reason for this developed teardropped area, right?
Okay.
This was absolutely a focal point of me personally.
All right, so,
Well, the advantage is you're coming from another place and all the things that didn't work out right. Next year,
you're not bringing here.
We deal with
Great,
300
great.
plus school buses exiting the lot right next door every morning.
Every morning.
And of course, they come back at 1 o'clock and,
Wow.
you know, so, traffic, and trucking, yes, exactly right. We've learned our lesson, so to speak, and so this was absolutely, something that I was insistent upon as the ultimate,
Good.
customer.
All right, so in terms of the 5 criteria, the as Travis said, the industrial park, it's been zoned that way for a long time now. It is a allowed special permit use. There's no forging, smelting, or melting, just a lot of CNCing and drilling. With no waste going to the sewer system and water only used in the process. The board is aware of the concerns of the neighborhood and will presumably address those concerns through conditions, and even though the plans appear to have addressed those concerns, to ensure that they're met and there's no future problems, we can add conditions to that effect. There's the vehicle circulation on the site and on and off the site, and per the traffic numbers seems safe. And otherwise, you have an appropriate sized facility with appropriate parking and layout to ensure the proper operation of the use, structure, or condition. So if
Nice
you
job. I'll make
agree-
that a motion.
Great.
Yeah, I'll second it.
So it's to grant the special permit for the manufacturing use, having made those findings I just said out loud.
That's why we video it.
And so that's the use under G2, manufacturing,
Yes.
in the table.
Yep.
So that's just for the use itself.
All right, so we have a second?
Got a second.
A second? Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so the use special permit is granted. Do you want to look at Route 146 overlay, or do you want to table that and get site plan and those things cleaned up and just prepare conditions for those permits for the next
Should be easy if we wait.
meeting.
What'd you say?
It'd be easier if we wait. It should be, I'm assuming it's gonna be done right, everything else has been. It should be pretty easy.
Yeah,
As
I
opposed
mean,
to doing it tonight.
obviously, the Northbridge Planning Board has asked, they've actually asked for you to wait to act until their next meeting, which isn't until the 14th. Your next meeting is the 13th. I will talk to the planner over in Northbridge tomorrow and let him know that, you know, the board's next meeting is the 13th, and we've seen nothing in the traffic study that would suggest there would be
Any
any
big concern?
undue note, you know.
You've
I
given
mean-
them the traffic study, correct?
Yes, I
Yeah.
gave them the traffic study. They have I think they're on a summer schedule. I think that's the issue, that they just haven't had they don't have a meeting between when they got it, which was actually not till the 25th, because we did not get it till the 23rd. And between the 25th and the 14th, they don't have a meeting scheduled. So, but there's nothing in there that would suggest.
And what is their impact on this project to them?
They were worried about the impact of potential trucks on the Church Street, Linwood Ave, Hill Street intersection, and that's those small roadways through there. And I believe the traffic study, and one of the response to comments basically said that the majority of this traffic, the reason for siting at this location, and the majority of this traffic is really to go to 146, that you certainly can get places east of here by going through Northbridge, but that it doesn't make any sense. Even when you map it, you have to go much slower, you're on much more constricted roadways, you're going past school zones, but it just doesn't make sense.
And Prime Metals can also control that truck traffic so that it doesn't go down any of those side streets.
Right, specifically, we contract for trucking both inbound and outbound on our accounts, right? So people ship to us, collect, and then we ship outbound and pay for that as well. And what Mike is, articulating is that we then, as a result of that, have, influence and control over those trucking companies to say, do not do this, right? And I'm happy to put all of that together in whatever form to articulate that to the, whomever I need to.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly would be helpful if you can stress that on, in Prime Metals' words. And then just get it over to me, and I can forward that over to the planner and the planning board chair in Northbridge, so they can see that.
And what were the truck counts a day roughly, coming in and out?
10 to 15.
10 to 15, and what do you think, it's not Alice, but Alice Box and Crate does a day? And I bet they drive to
They do that
Hopkinton
now.
on those back roads. Are people complaining about that? I have no idea.
Go right down Boston Road.
I know, they come over,
There's at
I
least
see
one,
'em.
15 a day.
Yeah, I see them over there.
All right, so,
Motion to continue?
to the 13th.
Yeah.
Right, the very next meeting.
Yep.
I'll make that motion.
Let me give you, I gotta give you a time and date certain, so it's the 13th. Sorry, I'm dying. 7:05. Actually, let's make it 7:10. 7:10 PM on the 13th.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Sorry. 7:05. All right.
Yes.
My name is Carl Norwood. I own and remain the land. We also have been working cooperatively with Prime Metals. I'm very excited about that. I'm concerned what Scott had mentioned, boxing out the frontage on the remaining land.
Mhm.
I hope that's going to be addressed on the 13th.
Yeah, I think we need to.
We're working very cooperatively, the shared driveway and all that, sharing expenses, and so I just want to make sure we're very clear, because we're really talking actively with two other users for the remaining land.
And I encourage that.
Oh, no, this is great.
I just don't wanna put anybody in a box, that's all.
And I appreciate your comments.
Yeah, so we'll be looking at frontage.
Your interest in the future, that's what that's
Okay,
the
good,
intention.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, so we'll look at frontage and common drive, those issues between now and then, and try to
Yep.
make sure that's all pinned down.
I think that's gonna be critical, because I wanna make sure that we can address it, but not hold this project up because, you know,
That's right. Absolutely. All right, so we have a date and time. It's voted, yes? All right, so we will see you back on the 13th, and we'll work on stuff between now and then.
We're gonna make the paving.
Thank you
Okay.
for your time.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Okay.
White pavers?
It'll be less,
It just shoots it back.
All right, public hearing
I
bridal
don't
path.
see our next project proponent.
No?
George Funari is our next.
I know, huh?
Yesterday.
Did they,
Okay.
so are we gonna open the public hearing for this, or?
Yeah, we gotta open it. We might be doing a continuance.
This one or the one?
Okay, if you could take outside any conversation so we can move on.
Got another hearing. One more.
One more. Okay, so this is a public hearing for Bridle Path Definitive Subdivision Rescission, Barnett and Jones Roads. All right, in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 41, Sections 81T and 81W, Mass General Law, the Planning Board will hold a public hearing on the application of George Funari to rescind the definitive subdivision approval for Bridle Path, a 37-lot, single-family development off Barnett Road by McCarthy and Sullivan, as originally approved by the Planning Board on September 25th, 2006. The hearing will take place on the third floor of the Sutton Town Hall on Monday, July 30th, 2018 at 7:50 p.m.
All right. I do not see the proponent
After
here.
all these years.
Or a representative of the proponent here. The application simply says that they do not intend to build out the subdivision as shown. In my brief conversations with Mr. Funari, they basically ran the numbers on what you see on the approved definitive plan, which is, as you know, significant length of roadway, almost 2 miles, and 37 house lots. It's up on the board and on your iPad. And it's just, they have to pull a sewer line for that, and by the time you add that all up and dealing with that much roadway over the terrain, it just makes absolutely no sense. It's taken them a long time to get to this point, but they have gotten to this point, and they would like to request that the board just rescind the approval altogether. And should they wish to proceed with something in a different form, they would have to refile that project in accordance with current regulations and go through that whole public hearing process again.
Starts all over, eh?
So, I don't see a reason not to grant it, but obviously the applicant is not here. The only concern right now is that there are unpaid taxes on this land right now, and I would recommend that the board not act on anything with unpaid taxes. So, maybe we can see if there's any board comments, any public comments, and I will get in touch with the proponent, find out why he wasn't at the meeting, and refresh I did refresh his memory, because I did call him last week and tell him that the board cannot act without taxes paid, so, and he did acknowledge that and said he would take care of that, so.
I think we just, oh, go ahead.
Jack Sheehan, 26 Jones Road. It should be noted that there are other permits that the applicant had in hand which have since expired, notably the order of conditions, his MEPA certificate. I don't know what other permits he may have had. But there was a covenant extension, I believe, that you granted an extension through the 30th of June. You did not grant an extension past that.
No, because this was already pending. I mean, this was already filed.
So that would be something else that has left.
Yeah, I mean, the board, it's a covenant, so the board could extend it even after the fact, but I didn't even bring it to the board to act on because this was in hand, so. If for some reason there's a double back, the board will then put the covenant back in place, cause it's protective of the town as well as the development.
Okay. It just adds to the,
Crazy paperwork, yeah.
the bylaw, regulation about not acting, within a year comes back then, if you're not gonna act tonight. I understand the taxes thing, I understand, you know, it's just that it goes on. And to be clear, I am not bringing these things up because I don't wanna see, you know, anything move forward there. It's just that this inaction in this project has gone on for, it's at least 2005. And nothing's happened at all.
I would agree.
So, what happens now? You just
Well,
continue the hearing?
we're gonna need to continue the hearing, and I'll get whatever input the board wants me to get and try to ensure that the applicant is here on the 13th, and take it from there, and that taxes are paid between now and then, so the board can take action. And it would get rescinded, that gets recorded at the registry, and then all of those lots would get.
So I'm unclear as to why the board can't accept the rescission now.
They could act on it now. We have a delinquent taxpayer bylaw that basically says no board should act on any application before it and or grant any permits if taxes are unpaid on the subject property.
Do you know if the taxes were current when you granted the last extension?
Yes, they were, cause we send out a slip to the treasurer collector's office every time. So, these are 1 quarter in arrears is all that the tax collector said, so everything's except for the
Yeah.
last quarter.
I mean, it just,
Bob first, do you have a comment?
The subdivision, we've been assessing this subdivision for about 10 years. When it was first approved, the town got growth from it. Subsequently, when he had the problem with trying to get cleared title to one or more of the parcels, we found that we had to reduce the value of the properties. But at this time, he pays over $20,000 a year in taxes. So he's already paid $200,000 to the town, at least, over this time period. But you have to realize that with the recession of this, that there's gonna be a cause and effect. When you rescind it, that $20,000 will have to be picked up by all us taxpayers in town. And that's what happens in these types of cases and other similar types of things like the church on Gilmore Drive. Everybody else picks up the difference on those particular things. I don't object to the recession. Glad to see that it's finally going through. It's gonna create an immense amount of problem for us. It should be approved.
Yeah.
Bob?
Typically when, to answer your question, when stuff happens, we send out, you get notified that you owe taxes. You're not supposed to be on the agenda. But the fact is that before the meeting, when people get that, they come in and pay the taxes. For whatever reason, they forgot to, or they didn't have the money, so they borrowed it, but things don't usually get here owing taxes. It gets taken care of between when this was started, and that's why it's a little unusual. But I don't think we should be that hard. When someone comes in and fills out the paperwork, they don't even know sometimes that they owe some taxes. And
I don't think that's the case, and I don't think that's the situation in this case.
I don't know. I just.
I suppose that's an assumption on my part.
Yeah. No, but we do. It's happened tonight. Someone that was before us owed taxes, but by the time they got to us tonight, we got a note that said the taxes were paid. It said taxes due, and then above it says paid with the time.
Yeah, was your
and then you
Form
can
A
move
plan.
forward, because no one wants to get here and be told that.
No, we got two of those tonight, actually, besides this
Yeah.
one.
One more question. The, if I understand correctly, there's one more, planning board approval that exists that runs through 2020, is that correct?
No. The subdivision is grandfathered through 2020. By requesting rescission, he just wiped out his grandfathering.
Just by requesting it?
Well, by the
Okay.
board granting.
No, I understand
By
that,
the board
but they're in
granting it.
effect right now, there is still.
He's grandfathered until the board grants it. Once the board grants a rescission,
Right, but that's the only thing that's still valid right now.
that I know of. I mean, obviously, I don't control all the other boards' permits,
They're all.
but there was a covenant that is currently expired because this was pending. The board
Right.
could put that back in place if anything goes weird, just to protect the town. But I don't think that's gonna happen. And then the subdivision is grandfathered until 2020. And when you request rescission and it's granted, you voluntarily give up your grandfathering. And anything you wanna file going forward has to go through a whole new public hearing process and comply with current regulations, not those old ones.
So that's brand new.
So it will go away. The grandfathering will leave once the board grants rescission.
Whatever. Thank you.
All right, so you have a motion to continue?
I've got a question.
Oh, sure.
So if it's going to be reheard next month, will we get another certified letter in the mail?
You will not get another certified letter in the mail. That's why the board has to give a date and time certain in this hearing, so that anybody who's interested knows exactly when it's gonna be heard and exactly what time.
So it won't be next month?
It will be the 13th, I believe, and then you just have to decide how long you think Prime Metals will take.
When we put this before, this should take about a minute in my mind.
All right, well, we did push them to 7:10, so I can put this at 7:05.
7:09. Be
Yeah,
done by
7:05.
7:05, August 13th, 7:05 PM.
Out of town.
All right, who wants to make that motion?
If you have any input or you wanna get more information, feel free to
I make a
stop
motion
by
we
or
can-
email me or anything.
Thank you.
I make a motion, we continue this hearing until 7:05 on August 13th.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Who was the second?
A bunch of people.
Oh, who was the second? That was.
Wally,
We were arguing about it.
Oh. Well, Bob jumped in and stole it from both of you.
Yeah,
So,
That's okay.
at
Did
what
the-
time?
he was behind my back.
9 o'clock.
It's a little after 9.
Plenty of good time.
9:02 PM.
Night, Crystal.